closest we can get to nature is the park. It's a real refuge. Yeah. And I think that, you know, the argument about freedom of expression is not the best metaphor. I think the more parallel thing would be with smoking. Your right to smoke ends where my nose begins. That what right does somebody have to come and impose sound on me I do not want to hear? And, well, that would be an interesting argument. I do not agree.
At any level of noise?
No, I'm just saying.
But what about a right to silence? Then I don't mean a right to silence. I thought one makes sense. I would say we need the right to silence, we need the right to peace. I'd say at least half of the time during the daytime, music should not be allowed. I'd say the other half,
Get out there.
pretty much any.
Yeah, we're just getting next to each other.
What time of the day?
I was,
How would you feel
I
someone
would say
said writing
over half
wasn't
the
allowed?
time, no music. When there is music allowed, I'd say it should be half of the park, and the other half no music at all. But any music that's in the one half of the park should not be so loud it could come into the closed part. That way, if anybody wants to go any time of day and get silence, why have it, even if people are making these music.
So we've heard about, we've now covered intensity of sound, we've heard of hours, we've talked about quiet zones, we've talked about, okay, yes, sir.
I had to leave in the middle of
Can't hear.
My name is Ryo Sasaki. I'm playing trumpet and I'm leading a band usually weekday in the west side. We play, usually get there like 12 and then start playing like 12:30 to 5:30 to 6. We've been doing it 6-7 years. And recently I'm a musician, but recently it's kind of some of the drummer, they're very, very loud. And I try to talk to, some of them, but they don't really listen. And like today, we were sitting in one spot, and then there was one drummer right next to us, and they're banging the drum, so we had to move to the other side.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, personally, I like to keep the music going on. Folk musicians maybe complain about jazz musicians complain about funk drummer, but maybe we need some kind of guideline or some kind of like enforcement from the park department,
Decibel level.
The performance, we usually not playing in the morning, never playing nighttime. So differently afternoon, couple hours with break. So my suggestion is maybe some kind of rule. There are sort of unspoken rule between musicians, the piano player, the guy who play under the arch. We are West Side, me and Rashid share the spot. But now there are some people kind of new to the park, or I don't know how I can put it. But
Rio, this is because they're being forced out of Central Park.
well, maybe
Washington.
I don't know why. But there are people just like disrespect to others, not even musicians, to the people never. If somebody told me, oh, you have to play quiet, we can play quiet. But there are people who just say, oh, I don't give a shit. And, yeah, so maybe there's some kind of like guideline to be helpful.
The gentleman here who came to speak at our meeting 2 months ago about folk, there was a folk musician who came and said he was being drowned out by, is there a folk musician?
I'm not a folk musician. Actually, my name is David Peller. I've lived in the village for 40 years. I go to Washington Square Park daily. I was part of the conflicts 40 years ago when they wanted to ban the music, and it was decided that there was a constitutional right to play music. And they pursued it, and they still do. I'm not here to talk about that because I think it was intelligently enforced for 40 years. However, you have tick and tack who show up in the park 5 times a day, every day. They've created a venue for themselves, which is against the rules. They solicit donations actively and aggressively, which is against the rules. They use a full percussion to attract the crowd. If you would enforce against them the provisions that are already in existence, it would go very much toward immediately resolving the current problems.
People busking and
The question is what defines a performance which requires a permit? And I say when you do something scripted 5 times a day, that is a performance. Thank you.
Sir, can I ask you to just clarify the rules on busking and the gathering of crowds?
Boy, it looks like taking hair.
I'm sorry, did you want to?
No, I'm going to read the article law soon. I'm just waiting.
Okay, go ahead. He's got it.
Oh, can I read it?
Jim.
Hi, my name is Bruce. I've been playing in the park since 1970, and many of the acoustic musicians are actually here in the room with me. We don't actually need a new law. We can fix this tomorrow because the people who were just mentioned come there specifically to drain the money out of the tourists. They actually are blatant enough to take bags and say, we need the money. Here's the law right now that if it were enforced tomorrow, they would never
That's not
come
making
back
noise.
to attack. These are the Parks Department laws. I didn't make them. No person shall solicit money or other property from persons not known to such person in any park unless such person possesses a permit for non-commercial solicitation issued by the commissioner. Ms. Nielsen, I brought this up at various other meetings. The green shirts do absolutely nothing. Let's
Right.
enforce this.
Now, my rebuttal to that is,
Okay,
I went to Central Park.
Sir, there are 100 people here. Could you let me call on? All right, the comment there was that trying to generate, or asking for a donation is not allowed.
They most do.
Having your hat open in front of you is allowed in the park.
That's not what they're doing. I have video of
Allowed.
it.
You all do it, so we let you.
So that is the two
Yeah.
things, I got it. Second point, what about the gathering of, how big a crowd?
The permit rule is 20 people or more. The issue that our PEP officers face, to my understanding, is that how do you measure? Is this the 4 of us kind of standing here? Do we count in the 20 or not? You know, and so that's, again, I'm here to listen. So whatever the community board wants to recommend to us, we'll take it to heart. So.
All right, so let me just recap here. We've discussed hours of operation, we've discussed the potential of quiet zones, we've discussed enforcement of decibel levels or sound that's too loud. We've discussed we discussed tick and tack.
Oh, we're here.
Let me finish. We discussed aggressive, actively trying to get cash and solicit cash, and we discussed gathering crowds of very large.
Preventing people from walking in certain areas
which
of the park.
is due to the size of the crowd, right?
Well, it's not the crowd, they're marking off parameters.
So, yeah. All right, any other comments specifically aimed at any ideas around how to address this, other than if the Parks Department would just enforce it, because that's where.
About noise.
Yes, sir, in the back with.
About noise.
Hi, my name's Thomas Scopey. I play regularly in the park. I have for the past few years. To touch back to what this gentleman said, I don't mean to point you off, but he used to play in the park 40 years ago. My wife and I, we're two people that pride ourselves in trying to keep that tradition alive. We do have constitutional rights that do allow us. I've been doing this for a very long time. It's great exposure as a musician. It's a great way to meet a lot of these great community members that I've met. I was featured, my wife and I, in the past few weeks, twice in the Villager and once in the New York Post. We were the typical example of those folk musicians that are being pushed out of the park and not allowed to play any longer.
Being overwhelmed, yeah.
What it really comes down to again is there are musicians that are too loud. To say, also to address with the red and white checkered shirt, who said he didn't want certain hours where no music could be played. I feel it's equally absurd for me to propose, maybe I want certain hours that no one can write, no creative activity at all.
Just how would writing stop you from playing music? You're playing music, someone from writing.
We'll burn the books.
It's not really parallel logical.
Okay, let's
So
not
did you
fight.
have it, so the proposal, did you offer a proposal?
Well, it would be absolutely absurd of me to do so because we have the constitutional right to express
So it would
ourselves.
be-
However, the only rational and reasonable end to this has to be some way, again, a decibel meter to control the noise because we are all.
Let me make one more point on this. What about this what about an idea of medallions? Of a certain number of.
Constitution. It's called the Constitution.
I had to ask.
It's about noise. Not medallions.
One other idea that somebody should ask. Yes, why don't you go? Yeah. Oh, there he is. Good. Come on in. Mr. Castro, we've done a lot of work. We set you up. Good to see you, everyone. This is Andrew Martin, Mr. Castro. Let me give you a little piece over here coming up. What we discussed, Commissioner, is people have talked about the intensity of noise that is too loud, neighbors have complained about the decibel level being too high. They've said that people play past the hours of 8 to 10. They've talked about drummers being potentially the loudest of them. They've said that they just want people to enforce the laws, including laws around actively soliciting for money. There's been discussions around gathering of side crowds so that people can't walk through. So I was performing to performance. Yeah. So I think it really, the summary is coming down to a selection, a choice of asking, how can the rules that are in place be enforced.
How is it you don't mention decibel?
No, well, first of all, there is, but we also want a clarification of the rules, so.
And
first one was-
decibel meters for the cops, so they can measure the level of sound.
Many people
Many people would want enforcement.
You want to give a
Mike, give us that.
No, that's all right, I'll try with that one first. Want the microphone?
Yes. Okay, here you go. That's better, right? That's much better.
Stand back from the
You want me to stand back from the microphone? Anything else? We're doing it. Where's the decibel meter, right? Well, we need one. Okay, so thank you all for coming. It's good to see so many people. We've, most of us here in the room probably have been in the neighborhood or come to Washington Square Park for many years, and obviously musicians playing in Washington Square Park is something that is a long tradition. And it started, I don't know when it started exactly, but certainly the folk singing was a very big mainstay of the park for many years, and then that varied, and of course jazz as well, big part. And then a variety of music and different instruments, and we've had everything from baby grand pianos in the park. That's been interesting. And the board expressed to us, and so basically, as the park was renovated, one of the issues came up and was talked about, and it was a pretty good consensus. I think that the public enjoyed this sort of freewheeling park, and that they liked it to remain the same, basically. Let me finish. Some people did, a lot of people did, but it depends on what your interpretation of that means, obviously. But in general, people liked the old word, the bohemian sort of feel of the place.
Any noise level?
Gil, I'm getting to that, all right? Okay, thank you. All right, so, but there's a limit to everything, and everyone has a certain definition, but in general, most people felt it's nice to have the musicians here, and they didn't want parks to crack down on it and make it into some kind of park that it wasn't, that it was the park of the village. And, I think we all understand what that means, pretty much. All right. So the park was renovated, people I think unanimously, practically, loved it and are very happy with the design of the park and how it's going. But recently, the community board sent us a resolution saying that there were a couple of things that they were concerned about. One of them was skateboarding, that they were concerned about, and another was excessive noise. Not that there was musicians playing, they were fine with that, but they were concerned that it was getting too loud at times. And then recently, as you've all, either you've read The Villager or the New York Post, or you've heard about it, or the board members have been talking to people, or you've been talking to them, telling them how you feel about things. And certainly I have been aware, and our administrator, Sarah Nielsen, who's also here tonight, has been aware, because she's in the park all the time, that there are various concerns about it, that either somebody's playing an instrument, whatever it is, whether it's a trumpet or a saxophone, too loud, or a drum set that's too loud, and that some musicians, I have heard, are concerned that it's drowning out their ability to play, particularly the acoustic instruments, but it may be beyond that as well. And, it's common sense as I hear all this, and I've seen it too. I was down the park last week, I think it was Thursday, and there was a drum I could hear from the northeast outside of the park to the southwest. And just too much, when it's unreasonable, and that's how it's termed in the city's noise code. Now, I'm not an expert on this, but I have some familiarity, obviously. I've been with parks a long time, and I used to run the park enforcement patrol many years ago. But the issue here is what can be done to address the concerns, the reasonable concerns of the general public. Because we want you to enjoy the park, not get a headache when you're in the park. And you should be able to enjoy it, and multiple uses, and there should be multiple musicians who can perform. And you know, when you go and you see the combos playing, it's great. And there's a variety of groups, and I know some of the names of them, not all of them. Sarah knows them, and it's amazing, right? You go there and you listen to a folk group, and if you're my age, it takes you back a bit, or a jazz group, and most people like jazz, as long as it's got a melody, at least. That's my school anyway. And a lot of them, thank God, do in this park, so it's kind of great. And so there's all sorts of stuff, and they're very talented people. And it's fun, and it's part of what the park has always been. The thing that drives everybody crazy is, no matter what kind of instrument, if it's somebody who's just sort of doing it for themselves, and you can hear it everywhere, and it's just, it's okay. So Parks is exploring now with other agencies and entities, what's the best way to address this? We do have remedies to deal with it. One of the problems, and I'll stop in a second, one of the problems has been, it's frequent, there are a lot of people playing music. So you need a steady, consistent enforcement presence. And until this spring, we really didn't have that in Washington Square Park. We're fortunate now that we have 6 park enforcement officers who can enforce the park's rules and regulations and other city laws. And we didn't really have that before. And when the resolution came to us before, that was in the fall, I believe, or late fall. Oh, that's right, it was in July, but then we didn't have any PEP to speak of, and then we rolled fairly quickly into the winter. And really, April was kind of a fairly cool month. So May is when things really started to get warm, and that's when these complaints really started to come in. Not that it hadn't been a concern over the years, on and off. So now we have sort of the capability to do this with PEP here, dedicated only to Washington Square Park, the 6 officers. And, so that's why I'm really glad and grateful to the community board to take the leadership on this and convene not just this meeting, but to talk and be exploring this matter, and for you all to come here and stand up and be counted and to talk about it. Because I think it's common sense, we want it to be a good experience for everyone. And there are ways to do it, and we're just sort of figuring out, because it's a little bit complicated at times, how best to do it, but we will be doing something. And that's why I'm here today, to hear everybody.
This gentleman has a great answer.
You were not here when we spoke about measuring the sound in a black and white method, decibel meters, and it's in the law. It's local law 113, section 24-218, and it limits the sound to not more than 10 decibels 15 feet away from the source of sound in a public right-of-way, which the park is.
Right.
So you have 6 officers there, and you could give them a few decibel meters, and they could then go to the people that are making that sound, and they could fine them as much as $1,000 or as little as $350. One shot like that, and we wouldn't have to have these meetings.
Right. I don't want to sound like I work for the State Department and not really say, answer the question, but yes, I'm very aware of it. I'm very familiar with that statute and the parks rules and regulations, which are a little bit different, but often has the same language as the noise code. You're quite right, sir. And we're looking at how best to enforce the noise code. And I'll advise the board and I'm not just saying this, we are discussing this and trying to formulate this so we can deal with it. It can get a little difficult. We want to make sure it's done the right way. And so we will be getting back to the chair on how we will do this.
What is the schedule of the enforcers and how does one contact?
Let me structure. I want to hear from anyone who feels that if in fact the measurement of these decibel levels was able to be done and the law was enforced, if anyone feels that that would be a bad idea.
It depends, I'll allow 10 decibels. I mean, as a musician myself, my name is Jim, I come to the park on a regular basis. And, and I don't live in Manhattan, and the reason that I come here is because I have good friends here, and because of this park. And there's a spirit about it that you talked about earlier. And, it is just really discouraging to come in there and, you come there with the expectation that people really want to play together and they really want to jam together. It's a free thing, it's a universal thing. Then you realize it's all about them and they will turn up for example, there's a guy that comes in the park, he brings like trash can. And he hits that is not a musical instrument, by the way. I'm sorry. But I think if you go to Carson and get one and let me know, but the point is.
And that's what you want to ask with.
The point is like, how high is, because, you could be playing folk music that maybe goes higher than 10 decibels.
Well, it's a good question, and there are a lot of questions like this. That's part of the reason why we're discussing this, because we probably, as we get into this is my guess, I could be wrong, as we start to get into this out there may be adjustments that we need to make based on how this works. Most of the primary method, we try to just seek compliance. In other words, we don't seek to give people tickets or anything. We say, look, you need to turn that down. That kind of thing, a common sense thing. And sometimes people don't realize or whatever, sometimes they do. But, so we would seek to educate people, tell them what the story is on this, what the law is, and what they need to do. That would be the first step. I don't know exactly